Why would you recommend somebody to buy gold and not Bitcoin or specifically or crypto right now? You've changed my thinking and thoughts on this more than anybody. So I would love to hear if you had a moment to comment on that.
The crypto people say technology has, changed the game and changed the nature of money and all that. But the same thing that was true 5,000 years ago is true today. And that is, there is a time, not all times and not all people, but there is a time when you want to take your marbles and leave the sandbox. You don't want to take a flyer on the system. You don't like the interest rate. You don't like the terms. You don't like the risks. You don't like something. And you want to, get paid final payment, not some sort of intermediary payment, but a final payment and go home. And so that has to be a physical, tangible commodity, a physical good that you can hold in your hand. And over thousands of years of evolution, people discovered what was the best good for holding in your hand and taking home. And there's two of them, there's gold and silver, for slightly different purposes. Crude oil, as I said, it would take a swimming pool of crude oil to buy, a nice, decent car. And crude oil is smelly, it's toxic, it's highly flammable, it perishes if it gets exposed to oxygen or sunlight. There's a lot of regulations around storing it. You don't really want a couple of tanker trucks driving up to your house. Where would you like us to dump this crude oil, sir? So every commodity has their issues, and gold and silver are the ones that are the best for doing that. In addition, there's something very important economically to say about gold, and that is we've been mining gold, so far as we know, for at least 5,000 years. A friend of mine wrote a book called The Dawn of Gold, and he argues that the Neanderthals were pulling gold nuggets out of the stream beds in Europe 13,000 years ago. And he's done some research into anthropology to establish why he believes that. We know it's been around for a long, long, long time. And after all this time, we continue to mine more of it. Gold is not consumed. Virtually all of the gold ever mined in human history is still owned by somebody somewhere. It's all hidden in hoards. I mean, you can't inventory it. So the World Gold Council statistic surely understates the amount of gold that's out there by a significant margin. Mm-hmm. But what we know is that we've been accumulating over 5,000 years. There's no such thing as a glut. We continue to add more to something we've been accumulating for 5,000 years. There's no other commodity, silver being remotely close, that works like that. And what that's saying is that the marginal utility of gold does not decline, it does not diminish. The next ounce of gold is worth what the last one was. And if there was a decline, as there is in normal commodities, if that was diminishing, then we would have long ago hit the point where we're not mining anymore. And yet we don't hit that point. So Bitcoin, on the other hand, it's very, very important to them that the quantity not be allowed to go up because they believe, and rightfully so, that the utility or the value of Bitcoin at the margin diminishes. And so Bitcoin has a centrally planned cap of 21 million units, provided that the incentives don't change and the miners don't, fork it and then change the rules in some way. We'll see about that. But Bitcoin is not a final payment. You don't have a Bitcoin. And so I was interviewed by a guy who's involved in Monero. And Monero has the advantage over Bitcoin that it's much more anonymous. And Bitcoin isn't really anonymous, so it's pseudonymous. So, okay, so that's interesting. And, people that tried to send Bitcoin to the Canadian truckers found that their wallets could be, deemed to be unacceptable on the exchanges and so on. I guess that wouldn't happen with Monero. But, I just lost my train of thought. Oh, so he was saying that if you had a USB, dongle or hard wallet, cold wallet of some sort, that represents that's a physical representation of Bitcoin. So notice it. That thing only stores essentially a fancy long number with a lot of digits in it, and that number is a key that unlocks a particular record on the blockchain. But there's no such thing as having a Bitcoin, not in the sense of holding it in your hand. What you have is a claim against the Bitcoin blockchain, and that claim is good so long as the blockchain is maintained and the people who maintain it continue to have the same incentives as they do now, which may or may not be true. But you don't have a physical thing. And if the blockchain were to go down, the internet were to go down, any number of scenarios, the government were to make an order, whatever it is, there's nothing that you own. You have a relationship with the blockchain. That is, there's something on the blockchain that only you have the key to unlock, which isn't the same thing as saying, I have a piece of gold. And we may be in times where people may want to have a few ounces of gold in the sock drawer, as it were. I don't know what's coming in.
Perfectly put. No, perfectly put. We get a lot of people that are selling gold or silver to buy crypto. What would you tell those people? Vice versa.
I've said this on Twitter many times. Bitcoin is obviously far superior to gold for skyrocketing.
Yeah.
I mean, gold is not the thing that skyrockets. Gold is the thing that's stable. Everything else, it's up and down motion to be measured against gold anyway. But so if you want to make a bet that something's going to skyrocket, you could make an intergenerational fortune. And I know folks who've done that by betting on, Bitcoin or Ether or any of these things and betting at the right time. And I don't know where the price of Bitcoin is going to go next. I just shake my head every time I see some of the big famous gold people that claim Bitcoin's going to be zero by tomorrow morning. I'm like, what happens when that doesn't occur? Then, you just shot your credibility, right? I don't know where the price is going to go. Maybe it'll be $1 million. Maybe not. So, if you see a speculation opportunity, go for it. Just keeping in mind, it isn't money. It doesn't work as money. It doesn't have any of the characteristics as money. It's not digital gold. But if you can make money in it, just remember to take your profits. And where you're going to hold your profits, you should hold your profits in gold or silver, but not, don't be a hodler forever.
Yeah. And I love how you eloquently put it. Why isn't Bitcoin money and why it doesn't have the properties?
The first thing that's obvious about Bitcoin is that its price is not stable. And when you drill down into the economics of it, because they said that the quantity is going to be fixed, that means the value necessarily has to be volatile or unstable. And for them, that's a feature, but for money, that's actually a bug. So what does it mean for something to be unstable? So suppose you were to take out a mortgage in Bitcoin. So you're going to borrow 10 Bitcoin to buy a house, and then Bitcoin goes to $1 million. Well, your mortgage has gone up 25 times. You are so broke. So it's not possible to set a long-term contract denominated in Bitcoin, whether that be a debt contract, borrowing and lending, whether that be an employment contract. Let's say you had an employee who said, pay me 1 Bitcoin per year, and let's say that person's worth $90,000. 1 Bitcoin a year seems like a deal, right? But he wants a 5-year contract. Well, do you really want to sell a call option on something that could go up to $1 million and you can't hedge it? I suppose you could hedge it, right? So you could buy your 5 Bitcoin up front. But so anyways, you can't do long-term rental, like, renting a house for 100 years at a Bitcoin price. You can't do loan contracts, employment contracts, anything long-term. Doesn't really work because the thing's volatile. So is volatility a feature or a bug? Well, if you're trying to speculate to make money, i.e. buy and sell Bitcoin to make some other form of money, then great, then volatility is a feature. If you're trying to use Bitcoin as for its stated purpose, which it is money, then the volatility is a blocker and it doesn't work.
Perfect. I love how you always put that. So, yeah, thank you so much.